20 states are now hitting that threshold, as well as Washington, D.C. The price of filling your tank up nearly $2 from a year ago. Let's bring in Maria Bartiromo. And what do you think the practical effect of that is across the country as it ripples across?
Well, Dana, good morning to you. It's making American families poorer is really the bottom line here, because it is cutting into our paychecks to pay more for gas. People have a budget. They go to the gas station. They say, OK, I'm going to pay $80 for my fill up of my tank. Then they get there and it's, oh, wow, it's $120. So they're not filling it all the way. They're doing half a tank. They are busting the budget as a result. So it's done wonders for oil stocks. If you're an investor in this stock market, ExxonMobil yesterday hit a record for the first time in 8 years. The stock is up 71% year to date. Quite the contrary to what you're seeing if you've invested in technology stocks. NASDAQ down 23% year to date. There's no other way to look at it, Dana. This is cutting into wages and cutting into our budgets because we are paying more for gasoline. And even worse than gasoline is diesel, because diesel is also at a record high. And when you consider diesel is the fuel that goes into the ships and the trucks that transport all of the other items that we buy, that's why inflation is at a 40-year high right now.
I think one of the ways to visualize for everyone is to put up this graphic number 2, please. This is AAA. They fielded 50,787 out of gas calls in April. That's a 32% jump from the same month last year. So that's, to your point, that people are maybe not filling up all the way, then finding themselves in a bad situation and needing help as they're out of gas. Also, last night, President Biden went on Jimmy Kimmel for a pretty tough interview, I suppose you would call it. But anyway, he talked about inflation. And this is what he said. I want to get your reaction to this.
And so we're the strongest economy, and that's allowed us at least to stay on top of and a little bit ahead of what's happening around the world. Second thing is, look, inflation is the bane of our existence. Inflation is mostly in food and in gasoline at the pump.
Okay, so it's the bane of our existence. Where do you trace the problem back to then, sir? That would be the follow-up question I would have had.
That's right, Dana. That is the follow-up question. But this administration will not admit that when Joe Biden walked into the Oval Office, the consumer price index was at 1.4%. Then he signed in the COVID relief package in March, bringing inflation up to about 2.5%. That was $1.9 trillion. Then the Democrats tried to push a $5 trillion spending plan, which they said was $3.9 trillion, but it was full of gimmicks. That didn't pass. But then they passed another $1 trillion infrastructure plan. And then, of course, Ukraine got invaded by Russia. And now we're talking about inflation at 8.3%. Look, we are getting the latest consumer price index report out tomorrow morning. It is expected to stay elevated at a 40-year high of 8.3%. But one of the issues here is that the president is not being honest with the American people. Last night in that interview, he also said that we are the fastest growing economy in the world. He said in the world 3 times. That's actually not true at all. In the first quarter, we actually had a shrinkage of this economy. We had a contraction of 1.5%. Many people believe that is the beginning of a recession. And we are seeing a whole host of layoffs begin. That is what happens when you're in recessionary times. You go from really strong wages, really strong jobs, to layoffs. And right now, the tech sector is experiencing the biggest layoff string since 2020. Talking about companies like Netflix and other Meta, other tech companies announcing layoffs because they recognize that things are getting tight. This morning, the European Central Bank met, and ECB President Christine Lagarde said that the outlook is completely deteriorated. She could not give us an outlook, but they're going to start raising interest rates as well, as the Federal Reserve has done. The next Fed meeting is next week, Dana. We are expecting a 50 basis points hike by the Federal Reserve when the Fed meets next week. That's what they've promised us. So on top of all of that inflation, with things like eggs up 22% year over year, price of an airline ticket up 33% year over year. You're also getting the cost of capital moving higher.
Right.
That is the cost of loans. Last week, Jamie Dimon said an economic hurricane is coming and that they're going to be much more conservative. So you may not be able to get that loan that you thought you were going to get. And this morning on Mornings with Maria, I had one portfolio manager on who said, we are waiting for a Lehman Brothers moment. You remember when Lehman Brothers went down. Not everybody feels that way. Not everybody feels that way, Dana. But certainly there is a feeling that things are worsening right now, contrary to what the president said last night on Jimmy Kimmel.
Maria Bartiromo, thank you. We'll watch for you tomorrow morning with your analysis after that number comes out. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.